Is there anything more effective for treating a chronic bad mood than Homestar Runner? I have loved this site since its launch on January 1st, 2000, and I kept up with it until 2010 when the creators began a 4-year hiatus. If you have no idea what any of this is, let me educate you. Homestar Runner is a character created by Mike Chapman and Craig Zobel. They initially wanted to write an illustrated children's book using crudely drawn characters, but it was intended to be a joke among themselves and a few friends. Mike's dad must have had faith in it because he sent it to a ton of publishers, which resulted in a ton of rejection letters. A couple years passed, and in 1999, when Flash was becoming popular, Mike and his brother Matt decided to learn the program to animate their own cartoons and took inspiration from the characters in their book. Even though the website's namesake refers to a specific character, it was Strong Bad who fans most adored.
I'm Homestar Runner. Isn't that great?
Oh, I can't take it anymore. Hello, and welcome to I'm a Big Moron Who Can't Remember His Lines.com. I'm Strong Bad, and you don't know it yet, but I'm the reason you're here.
It's true.
And for the most part, the Homestar Runner website encompasses the entire world of these characters. I remember when Strong Bad emails were a weekly occurrence. I was a teenager at the time, and when I look back, I reflect on how cool it is to have grown up with something that is now so iconic. And every week, those emails would bring me and my friends together, and we'd laugh like crazy at these silly jokes.
Welcome to HomestarRunner.net.
It's .com.
Oh, right. HomestarRunner.net. It's .com.
Cut.
To this day, I have a lot of love for these cartoons and these eccentric characters, with a special fondness for Homestar.
I'm a song from the 60s.
But I'm not going to talk about the cartoons today as much as I love them. Today I want to focus on the adventure games on the site. As Homestar Runner inclined in popularity, the brothers Chaps and their friend Jonathan Howe started developing fun little web games that usually spoofed titles from the 80s and 90s. Later, they created a logo and a company name, Videlectrix. Mike and Matt started with really simple applications which are still available on the site, like this Dancing Bubs program.
I say come on for Hobo guys, I say come on for Hobo guys. Everybody to the limit, everybody to the limit, everybody come on for Hobo guys.
But they eventually moved on to more involved games with the help of Howe, who composed music and programmed many of them. There's Stinko-Man, a Mega Man parody that was inspired by Strong Bad Email number 57, Japanese cartoon. There's Awesome Cross, which was initially an Easter egg in Email number 61, Monster Truck. And of course, we have Peasant's Quest, which was also inspired by a Strong Bad Email. I am telling you, so many things came out of that segment. I think the adventure games really shine because it's so obvious that the creators have a love for them, especially some of the more classic titles. For example, in an early Strong Bad email titled Sisters, the women Strong Bad fantasized about are designs from Leisure Suit Larry. As you can see, Peasant's Quest is a King's Quest parody. When I saw this on the site, I was thrilled. I could not contain my excitement.
But dance again, like the rhythm's down your pants now.
I grew up with adventure games, and some of my favorite ones were Sierra's King's Quest series, so I was very happy that two of my favorite things were coming together to make a delicious cocktail, full of silly puzzles, fitting graphics, and in an interview, Mike, Matt, and Jonathan were questioned about their inspiration for Peasant's Quest. When asked about the first adventure game they had ever played, Mike and Matt said King's Quest I, followed by King's Quest II. Mike says, outside of text adventures, the first adventure game I ever played on PC was King's Quest I. It taught me the word crotchety. Later, when we played King's Quest II, I remember being legitimately terrified while inside Dracula's castle. Like, I had nightmares in 16-color EGA. You know, I totally understand that, because King's Quest III taught me the word horny. As in, horny toad. It was only later that I realized the word had an alternate meaning. When asked about their favorite Sierra adventure games, Matt responded with Space Quest II and Quest for Glory 2. Matt. Oh, Matt. My dude. Those are the worst in their series! Mike and Jonathan responded with Space Quest I, which is an excellent choice if I do say so, and Jonathan went on to say that Indiana Jones from LucasArts was the first adventure game to excite him. He didn't say which Indiana Jones game though, so I'm just gonna post a picture of Fate of Atlantis on the screen and hope that's the right one. I mean, how can it not be? Come on. When I started teasing a video about Peasant's Quest, I found out that it was many people's first time playing an adventure game. I think that's pretty amazing, to create something that is well past its prime in popularity and show a younger audience that it can be fun, perhaps encouraging them to look into what inspired it in the first place. The story is fairly simple. Set in the Daventry-like town of Peasantry, you play as a peasant whose house was just burninated by Trogdor, a majestic dragon with cute beady eyes and a beefy arm coming out of the back of his neck. In order to climb the mountain and seek your revenge, you must achieve 3 things: smelling like a peasant, looking like a peasant, and being on fire like a peasant. To complete these things, you must solve inventory object puzzles. This is a very close parody of the early King's Quest games, like eerily close. I'd compare it most to the first 3 titles, with this lake that spans 2 screens, this inn that reminds me of the pawn shop, and the fact that you have 3 objectives, similar to what you need to do in King's Quest II, and even these sparse screens that have nothing on them. King's Quest was known to have utterly useless screens with nothing to interact with. Peasant's Quest has several things like this, including this wavy tree screen where you can see naked Ned. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't say anything. He's just naked. He's Naked Ned. There is a well that you have to put something in, because of course there is. There is always a well in adventure games. There's a horse you can interact with, because of course there is. There are always horses, and there are a few characters you can interact with. But only a few, because adventure game settings, for whatever reason, are always sparsely populated. The art style is perfect, as are the animations of the characters, and of course the threat of death is always present. Even this endgame dialogue box of the creators is right on point with the old Sierra games. Here's one of Roberta Williams thanking you for playing King's Quest IV as a comparison. This always felt condescending. Thank you for playing, but you do suck. The tone of this game is of course much different. It's meant to be funny, and the text box is pretty much Reed and Strongbad's voice. The puzzles rely on this humor, as one of the solutions is to throw a baby in the lake. Don't worry, it's a very impressive swimmer and brings back a soda. You know what they say, you can't spell buoyant without baby. You know, if you reuse the B. If you haven't specifically seen the Trogdor email titled Dragon, then this weird looking thing probably won't make much sense to you. And you might also be a hermit with no connection to the outside world, because it's nearly impossible to not be at least aware of Trogdor. You don't necessarily have to like adventure games to enjoy Peasant's Quest, but you might not enjoy it as much if you aren't a fan of Homestar Runner. If you happen to like both fantasy adventure games and Homestar Runner, then you're in for a treat. This is also a full game, complete with a map, an inventory, and a point system. Honestly, it probably took me the same amount of time to beat this game as it took to complete King's Quest I. I love that the creators committed so hard to such a silly thing. Peasant's Quest is probably their most involved adventure game, but they did have a few more in other styles. Several were teased in email number 94, titled Video Games. Strongbad was asked what he would be like if he were in a video game, and he comes up with several examples that did go on to become actual Flash games you can find on the site. Thy Dungeonman started as a joke about not being able to get a flask.
Get ye flask. And it'd say, you can't get ye flask.
And went on to become a trilogy of games. The first 2 are text-based in the style of classic Infocom titles. The second, Thy Dungeonman, even gives a little nod to King Graham, the protagonist of King's Quest, and Adrian Ripburger, the antagonist from Full Throttle. The third title boasts Thy Graphics. Thy Dungeonman 3 looks simply fantastic. It reminds me of something like The Wizard and the Princess from Sierra, where graphics were starting to be introduced to parser command games. The monochrome color and scan lines simulate what you would see on an older monitor, and more specifically, I think the amber color is meant to parody the Hercules graphics card. Anytime the next screen has to, quote, load, it mimics the noise of a 5 1/4 floppy disk drive. Once again, the humor is on the absurd side, and the entire point of the game is to get ye flask, calling back to a previous joke from the video game's cartoon. Previously, you could not get ye flask. Now you can get ye flask, so you never have to imagine why on earth you cannot get ye flask. The last game I want to talk about is Dangeresque, officially titled Roomisode 1 Behind the Danger Desk. Is that really what it's called? This is in the style of a point-and-click akin to the popular LucasArts games of the early to mid-90s. The main character is based on a Strongbad email called Stunt Double, and recurs in a later email called Dangeresque 3. Strongbad's persona is meant to be a hard-boiled, yet relatively lazy detective whose catchphrase is,
So I'm gonna have to jump.
This game is not as involved as Peasant's Quest, as the entire thing takes place in this office setting and has fewer puzzles, but the fact that it exists makes me so happy. You play Dangeresque himself, and using only a few resources on the screen, you have to trick the chief into thinking you solved a case. This reminds me the most of Sam and Max Hit the Road. I'm not sure how intentional it was, but the fact that I'm in an office with jazzy mystery music in the background while playing as a crotchety detective gives me those vibes. In fact, I would have loved a full game in this setting using a retro-style design. It looks so good. I'm pretty sure I would have preferred something like this over Strong Bad's Cool Game for Attractive People. Not because that game is bad or anything, but because I genuinely enjoy these web games way more, and they're reminiscent of mechanics and graphics from past adventure games. A Homestar Runner point and click in the pixelated art style of Sam and Max Hit the Road would be amazing. Take my money! Even though the adventure games on the site are easily my favorite, their other games are fun as well. Some are obviously not meant to be a long experience and are more on the jokey side, like the Atari-inspired Secret Collect and Rhino Feeder. But others are more complex, like Trogdor, where you get to play the famous wingling dragon and burninate all the peasants. And my personal favorite of the non-adventure games, Awesome Cross, which was also the first game developed by Videlectrix. When I was capturing footage for this video, I suddenly remembered playing this game when it came out on the site and became completely obsessed with beating it. Not sure what happened there. I probably would have had this video out earlier had I not spent so much time with this thing. I had myself convinced that I could beat it, even though there was a lot of unpredictability due to a glitch where the power-ups and obstacles move at different speeds. But it was too late. It got personal. I had to win. What would I get if I won? Absolutely nothing, but I needed to win. So I played it. Until I won. Yeah, you won. This is what I get, really? Where's my trophy filled with steakums? But I digress. I think Mike, Matt, and Jonathan shine the brightest with these adventure games, Peasant's Quest being what I consider their magnum opus. They wanted to recreate an AGI game in the style of King's Quest, and they did just that while putting their own flair into it, and it's very well liked among fans. If you've never heard of Homestar Runner, I highly encourage you to check out the site and play some of the web games. I do hope it's all preserved after Flash is discontinued in 2020. The cartoons definitely will be, as they have found a place on YouTube, but I really hope the games are as well, because they have brought people such happiness, myself included. Homestar Runner has been one of my favorite things on the internet for a long time. It's like this little beacon of light in a pretty depressing world, and will likely be remembered for a long time. I'm kind of talking about it as though it's dead. This is not meant to be an in memoriam thing. I don't know why I went all strong set on ya. After a 4-year hiatus from 2010 to 2014, Mike and Matt started making cartoons again, though less frequently. They're still active on Twitter, posting drawings every now and then, and also on YouTube. And it's clear to me that they still love adventure games.
And for towers, just a pair of King Grahams. There they are. Here he is, off on a quest.
This makes me feel warm and fuzzy like mold. I want to thank everyone for joining me on this look back at some of the Homestar Runner games. I'm going to leave you with my personal favorite character, Homsar. Let his words stimulate great art and inspiration.
Don't look now. I'm just a friendly reminder. I think I won the Powerball.
This video is brought to you by my amazing patrons. If you want to support the show and see more content like this, then check out my Patreon campaign. If you do, I will love you in a very cardboardy, platonic way. Also, consider subscribing if you liked what you saw here, and if you didn't like it, then don't. It's your choice. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.